I'm Hesta Prynn, DJ and licensed therapist. This is Music is Therapy. Your session starts now. I became a DJ by accident. Let me explain. 30 years ago, before streaming services, before you could carry 10,000 songs in your pocket, I had a Case Logic binder full of CDs. You remember those? It was like that black zippered book with 4 CDs on each page. This one was huge and it held 200 CDs. That was my entire music collection. It was very, very good. It was my entire identity and also my entire bank account, basically. So this book had every Pearl Jam record, the Fugees, classic rock, Tool, the Beastie Boys, the Samples, Hole, Garbage, everything that I had waited for. I bought all these records with my money and I left it on an airplane. I flew Continental Airlines in 1996. I remember I landed, I got off the plane, and I realized I didn't have it. It was in the pocket of the seat in front of me. And I tried to get back on the plane to get it, but they wouldn't let me. All of it gone. At first, I thought I would recreate it. I'd just track down every single CD and rebuild this amazing collection that I'd lost, but I didn't have the money to do that. And honestly, it was so upsetting, I couldn't even deal with it. So I just took these feelings, I pushed them down, and I was like, I'm going to start over. I'm going to completely change my musical taste. And I started going to the discount bins at the record stores and going to yard sales, and the library had free CDs. And I would just buy or take whatever was cheap or looked interesting, or I liked the cover. I mean, it was honestly crazy. I was listening to all this music and I started getting really into the oldies, like the 1950s oldies, like Lollipop and Earth Angel. I got into Sergio Mendes and Os Mutantes and these compilations of one hit wonders from girl groups. I was super into it. It was this funny thing people knew about me. I was into all this old music and I knew every word, but it was because I didn't have a choice. And it's actually funny because later I started recognizing the samples, all those oldies compilations. They're the DNA of every hip hop record I loved. And when I started to DJ, I'd play them in my early sets and people would say I had an encyclopedic knowledge of music, which is so cool. When you build from scratch, you stop protecting an identity and you start discovering one. That's how I became a DJ. Not by curating the perfect collection, by building with what was available, by making it work, by rounding up. On this episode of Music is Therapy, I sit down with Dan Savage, the longest running sex and relationship advice columnist in history. And he said something that I can't stop thinking about. Round the fuck up. Dan says there is no the one out there. There's maybe a 0.78, or if you're lucky, a 0.82. And then your job is to round them up to the one. Do you relate to this? Because I really do. Someone becomes the one because you treat them like they are, and then their job is to return the favor. A relationship isn't about finding the perfect person. Dan says it's the story two people tell each other about what they mean as a couple. And over time, you can revise that story, you can edit it, but you got to round up. When I'm DJing, I don't stand there and panic and try to find the perfect track. And I don't panic and leave the set when the energy dips for a minute, because it definitely will. What I do is I take the record that's playing and I decide where we're going next. If it needs more low end, I add it. If it needs more excitement and lift, I build it. That is rounding up. Love works the same way. The question isn't, is this the perfect person? The question is, what am I building here? And who am I becoming while I build it? I think about my lost CD collection a lot because I could have spent years mourning what I lost, trying to find the exact albums again and rebuild the exact same version of myself that existed before I got off the plane. But I left her there. And the person I became, the DJ, the person who knows every genre, the person who can read the room and know exactly what to play because I choose it, it only exists because I stopped looking for what I thought I needed and I started building with what I had. This is the last episode of February, our relationships month. In March, which is next month, my birthday month, we're going to talk about the relationship you have with yourself. But love. Dan Savage and I actually met 20 years ago. I was in a radical feminist hip hop group called Northern State. You may have heard of it. We played the Crocodile Cafe in Seattle. I had a shaved head. My step cousin brought him. And after the show, Dan and I sat across from each other at the bar and we gabbed all night and we completely fell in love. And I thought Dan Savage is the coolest person ever. We're going to be best friends. But I was on tour, and also I didn't know how to keep in touch with people I was a fan of back then. We didn't have Instagram, so I just didn't. And now, 20 years later, we're sitting down again. If you've ever wondered if you're with the right person, if you've ever had that nagging fear that maybe there's someone better out there, this episode is actually made for you, because the answer isn't out there. It's how you show up and what you decide to build. Dan Savage is an icon. He is the author of America's longest running sex advice column, Savage Love, host of the Savage Lovecast, founder of the It Gets Better project, which has reached and saved millions of LGBTQ plus youth worldwide, and the person who taught the entire generation that monogamy and monogamish are two very different words. He is also a personal hero of mine. Here's my conversation with Dan Savage. You now have the longest running sex relationship advice column ever.
Yes, that's true.
Savage Love and podcast.
The Savage Lovecast.
The Savage Lovecast, which I listened to beginning in 2010. Okay. When I met my husband, I'm in a long-term married monogamous relationship, not a monogamish relationship.
Monogamous. Yeah, you have to be careful how you pronounce that word in front of me.
That's true. So listen, what we're doing here, the reason I brought you on is because I merge music and therapy, neuroscience to help people create their best lives. February, we are creating our best lives ever in love. Now, you taught me so much about sex, Dan. I know that's like a funny thing. People probably say that to you all the time, do they?
Yeah, which is weird.
Is it weird to be America's sex teacher?
I always like to think of Savage Love and then the Lovecast as this conversation I'm having with my friends about sex when we're drunk and we're like showing our work, comparing notes. And that so many people, especially so many people who are, under 50, under 40, that they started reading me when they were 13 or 14 years old or listening before they had a sex life to joke with me about in a bar when we were drunk. That always makes me a little nervous because the column isn't sex education, although it is kind of, it can play that role, but it's not what it's designed to do.
I think I understand what you're saying. And so here's my question to that. After this many years of giving advice that changes how people approach relationships in their sex lives, what do you think you got right? And what do you think you got wrong?
Oh my God, the list of things I've got wrong is so enormous. I was a 26-year-old gay boy when I started writing Savage Love. And there was no internet, so there was no instant, let me Google that and make sure I'm not just pulling this out of my ass or misremembering this, or that I'm even informed about this thing that I'm popping off on or being asked about. So I put the clitoris in the wrong place the first time I wrote about it. I had doubts about my male bisexuality that as a, jerky 26-year-old gay guy, I felt entirely comfortable expressing in very unkind terms. When asexuality first burst into the national consciousness, I was a doubter, and I'm not a doubter anymore. But that's the thing when you write a column for 35 years, is new things come along and you have this first reaction that then people who are mad about your first reaction don't somehow miss the 40 columns you wrote after that first reaction, where you're kind of processing the information and taking it in and thinking about it, and you arrived somewhere else. When you write a weekly column, and Savage Love for a long time was a daily column, because I used to do the Savage Love letter of the day, you're slinging takes. And so asexuality, male bisexuality, the precise location of the clitoris. But the thing I would think I was really wrongest about was straight guys.
Same. I feel like that might be the thing a lot of us were really wrongest about. What were you wrong about with straight guys?
This is not going to be a Jezebel post now from 15 years ago.
I hope not.
I didn't like straight guys, didn't have much use for straight guys, literally, figuratively, when I started writing the column. And it wasn't long after the column, which initially was just a joke. It was supposed to run for 6 months or a year, and then I was going to go back to Europe with my then boyfriend, and turned into a real column, a real advice column by accident. And I just started getting letters from straight guys who felt they could open up to me, or I would understand them because I was a guy. But I also got letters from women who felt I understood them because I slept with guys like they did. The column was for straight people, mostly. And I felt sorry for straight guys after reading their letters for a while. They run the world. That includes running the 7-Elevens, which can't be much fun. Straight guys and gay men are testosterone-soaked dick monsters. Straight men often aren't aware of how terrified legitimately women are of them, and maybe unconsciously leveraging that fear to get what they want, and sometimes consciously leveraging that fear to get what they want. Like, straight male sexuality is really problematic, but straight guys are trapped. It's more so 35 years ago when I started writing the column than now, but still many now, because to be straight and a guy is to not be a faggot and not be a girl. And it's not, there's a lot of things that can sort of instantly disqualify you. I can tell people that when I was young, I had sex with women when I was closeted, like a lot of gay men. And I think gay men should apologize for this. And, we did it under duress, but like my girlfriend was my closet for a while, kind of hollowed her out. And she was my closet. Yeah. And my disguise. I didn't create the conditions socially that required me to have that or die. Right. But still, and I can tell people I had a girlfriend and that I had vaginal intercourse, and nobody says, well, you're not gay then. If you could do that, you're not gay. Like, I'm never disqualified from being gay. Like, gay isn't something anybody ever has tried to pry out of my hands. But like a straight guy who met the one guy, got fucked in the ass by the one guy, or even just made out with one guy at a party, gave one blowjob, the old joke, build 1,000 bridges, nobody calls you an engineer, suck one dick, everybody calls you a... And the fragility and the terror of that identity, I wasn't consciously aware of it.
And so what it sounds to me like you're saying is that you were able, it sounds like you developed empathy for straight men. I really relate to what you're saying. And I think that, there's a lot of heterosexual-ish, if we're going to say, single women of a certain age who listen to this show. And I know that because they're my therapy patients. And they don't know how to relate to straight men either. Something I've learned in my work as a therapist is that I see couples and I help them get to the next level, whether they're fixing it or getting out of it. And I often end up taking the guy. And even the woman in a heterosexual relationship will say, can you just take him? Can you just help him? And these guys, most of whom are very successful, like external success, financial success, business success, this makes my heart pound. They have never had the experience of someone naming their emotion or asking them directly a question to this back part of their brain. And they come to presence so quickly and it's almost overwhelming. And I'm not a person I have a women's studies degree from Oberlin. Okay. So like, I didn't plan that part of it, but I was so surprised, similar to what you're saying, about that experience and how I think straight men have really been sort of marginalized. I can't believe I just said that. Like, is lightning going to strike me dead right now?
Right. But they are walled off, to maintain their heterosexual male bona fides, however you say that word, from their own feelings in a way, and constrained. And like, they helped build that prison. But I think sometimes we as gay men, sometimes straight women, we sometimes walk the perimeter and run the guard tower. Because like a woman I get like still to this day, not as many as before, but still to this day, like women will write me, my boyfriend likes to have his nipples touched. That means he's gay. My boyfriend, this or that, like has feelings. Imagine. That means he's gay, right? Because gay guys are allowed to have feelings and straight guys don't have feelings. And we talk about the performance of femininity and what a trap and prison that can be for women, but there's a performance of masculinity. There's some gay men who are trapped in the performance of masculinity in that prison, but straight guys in particular are immiserated by it. Like, patriarchy is bad for everybody, right? We know this.
Patriarchy is bad for everybody. We know this. I even want to like pause there and say, so the patriarchy is bad for everybody. We know this. I see a lot of young people. You commented on how you've seen things change since you were a 20-something-year-old man writing this column and how you've taught people how to be present in this part of their lives. What has surprised you about how connection between people has changed? And the second part of that question is, what can people do who are looking for connection within these prisons that have been created and maintained by all of us?
God, what's changed? Like, technology is the meteor that slammed into sex and relationships and changed everything. People are having a lot less sex. People are not connecting as much. People are being sexually assaulted less often. Like, technology has done weirdly good things and weirdly bad things. I'm a little older than you, Oberlin. Women's studies. I'm sure you heard at some point somebody arguing that porn is the theory, rape is the practice.
Sure.
Which was said by everybody in my women's studies class.
Yes.
When I was in college in the 80s. And then we saw porn come online and become ubiquitous, one state at a time, and then we had a real world test, and one country at a time. And as the internet came to different states and different nations and porn became widely available, rates of sexual assault fell. Awareness of sexual assault rose at the same time. So our perception is that we live in more sexually assaulty times than ever. But the data shows, even when you account for and guesstimate for underreporting, shows that access to pornography kept some people we wanted home alone on the couch.
So the good piece, that's obviously a good result, but the negative piece of this are people having less sex because they're on their phones?
They're on their phones. They feel isolated. Men are scared. Yeah. You can't be in denial about this if you talk to and hear from as many young men as I do. Men are scared that if they put a foot wrong, that they could get expelled from college, they could blow up their lives, they could lose their jobs. And we have to live in a world where people are allowed to guess wrong.
Sure.
Not lunge at people, not touch anybody.
Yes.
But asking somebody out and getting a no and taking that no for an answer, that is not sexual harassment. Continuing to ask that person out after you've gotten the no, that is harassment.
Right. So are people even asking people out, though, in person? Like, I mean, if online dating, I suppose this is interesting because I suppose even signing up for an app is essentially a form of consent, which is pretty great. But I'm seeing in my practice a lot of hopelessness around online dating and a lot of real resistance to it.
I have always told people to move on both fronts, to be on the apps, which is where a plurality of opposite-sex couples now get their start, and has for more than a decade been where the vast majority of same-sex couples have met on the apps. To be on the apps, but to leave the house, go places, do things, meet people, put yourself in situations and places where some interaction around a shared goal that isn't like who wants to fuck, like join a club. Take up a co-ed recreational sport if you're straight, or join a gay softball league if you're gay, and make friends and move through the world. And the apps are, rightly, I think, they're being sued now by unhappy customers who feel like they've gamified singleness.
Wow, they're being sued? Someone's suing?
Yeah, there are class action lawsuits against the apps for fraud, basically. That, I think it's Hinge or Bumble says the point of Hinge or Bumble is to get you to delete the app, to help you find love, and then you can delete the app. But that's not what the algorithm is designed to do or does to people.
That's such an interesting thing for a therapist to hear, because the point of working with me is to not have to work with me. And then people sometimes ask that question, but I like to advertise that this is a short-term intervention. Let me ask you this. It sounds to me like you're giving us almost timeless advice in how to meet somebody. Go out of your house, do something that you're interested in. Did the rules ever cross your desk?
Oh God, yeah. Like
be a creature like no other.
Yeah. And some of that just intuitively people do. Like, people kind of play games. Like, you start making generalizations about 4 billion women and 4 billion men, and there's going to be tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of exceptions. And the odds that the exceptions are reading my column or listening to my podcast or listening to your podcast or in your office are higher on average. But women do like to be pursued. Women often have responsive desire. Men get horny and want to have sex. Women begin to have sex and get horny. And how do you control for this in opposite sex relationships?
This is, by the way, what I'm dealing with apps and stuff, is that my female identifying clients, they don't want to go on apps because you can't, if you're stepping forward and saying, hi, chase me, you're not being chased. I try to use this metaphor of like, I love Bridgerton. I love The Gilded Age. I love like a little bit of ye old English with like a hip hop record, with strings or whatever, just like a little bit, and like the hottest cast they can find. And I'm like, if you're going to faint and wait for the man to catch you, like that's never happening, but walk into the room. The app is the room, like faint on the app. I think that's a really hard thing to do. But all the boys who work, go ahead.
But people used to do that. They'd go to singles bars. People used to be able to wrap their heads around that. And the other good thing I think about the apps and the emergence of online dating is it really became available to us as we were over decades having a conversation about it's not okay to hit on strangers on the bus. It's not okay to hit on people in school, in your class. It's not okay to hit on employees who might be under you or over you in your office. And so not at the office, not at school, not on the bus, not on public transportation. Don't walk up to women and introduce yourself to them, tell them to smile. But we needed a place.
Not at the club, not at a bar, not on a dance floor. I see that all the time. Let me dance with my friends. Let me be safe. It's a safe space. Don't touch me. All of this. Yes.
There are places that when we enter them, we're saying, here you may approach me. And I think bars, clubs are one of those places. But online, the apps is one of those places where you're just saying, right now in this place, in a way, especially in the apps, in a way that I can control, although sometimes women are overwhelmed by the numbers of responses they get. Sure. I can control the pace and flow of this and whether I respond or not. Here you may approach me. And we need that. We need that virtual space because we've declared a bunch of actual spaces to be off limits to the approach.
Yes. Okay. I think that is very good actionable advice for anyone who is really rejecting getting on an app. I want to switch and ask you about.
But do both. But get on the apps.
Do both.
And leave the fucking house.
And join a softball team. I'm like, if you don't like sports, I don't know what to tell you. What I want to ask you about is so I'm a fan. I'm a true fan. When I met my husband in 2010, I used to work out in the gym, in the basement gym in his building. And I would listen to the Savage Lovecast. I don't even know what you called it then. Was it the Lovecast?
Yeah, the Savage Lovecast. It's always been the Savage Lovecast.
It was like the first podcast ever. And I used to listen to it. And I used to work out. That was when Santorum happened, which was the most the greatest nonviolent protest I have ever participated in. If you don't know about Santorum, look it up. That was, of course, when you and your husband of now over 25 years, is that right?
31 years.
31 years, co-founded It Gets Better, which has unquestionably saved many lives and affected so many people, right? What is it like to walk around, to live as you, savage love aside, all of this sex talk aside, what is it like to have had the impact on so many young people and been responsible for saving people's lives, which you certainly are?
You can't move through the day regarding yourself in that way, self-regarding yourself in that way, I guess I'd have to say. I would be paralyzed and unable to write and run my mouth if I thought the stakes were that high. I've helped people, and people have come up to me in airports and burst into tears because something I wrote addressing somebody else's question saved their marriage, was what they needed to hear to reconnect with their kid. Just something in the mix of this ongoing conversation helped. It Gets Better, of course, was designed to intervene and help more directly. And that's tremendously gratifying. But if you crawl up your ass and think about that all day, if that's what, you're going to get really mannered and paralyzed. So what's it like to be me moving through the day? Yeah. I'm an introvert. I have my husband, I have a boyfriend, and my world is very small. During the lockdown, during the pandemic, it kind of didn't change much for me because I just stopped going to a cafe to write and stayed home to write, and I was still just like me and my laptop and doing the podcast. And I mean, I had tremendous privilege during the pandemic because my job didn't stop, and more people were online wanting to converse and talk and connect. And there are brand new things to talk about and think about and write about, including how to have sex during a pandemic, which is something I was intimately familiar with, having had sex during the AIDS pandemic. But, I had a big house, lived with my husband and his boyfriend. And so there was we had a little society. It could be me and my husband or him and his boyfriend or all three of us or me and his boyfriend. And we could come together and separate. And that was tremendously privileged. But I'm just a weirdo.
You're just a weirdo? Well,
Yeah.
I think probably people who listen to this show hear what you just said. Myself, my husband of 31 years, my boyfriend, his boyfriend, and we all had a little society. And they say, wait a second. Wait, what do you mean? But the way I want to ask you about this, I'm a monogamous lady. Although back then when I was dating my now husband, I was reading Sex at Dawn. I was like, we have to do it like this. This is what it has to be, because I was listening to your podcast. But it's not me. So here's the question. How do you maintain a relationship for 31 years if you are a monogamous person, not a monogamish person? Can it be done? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely, it can be done. So long as you control for boredom.
How do you do that?
The thing that a lot of monogamous people say about non-monogamy is it sounds really complicated and handling four people's emotions and needs and meltdowns and idiosyncrasies. How do you do that? And what Tara and I always say to people, or sometimes we say this to each other when we're in conflict about something, one of us will very calmly just interject, at least we're not bored.
Okay, fair.
And, and that is a problem in settled monogamous relationships sometimes. Tara and I have been together 30 plus years. We have an adult child we raised together. Mm-hmm. A lot of similarly situated couples are just kind of hanging out, wondering who's going to die first.
Right? I've been married for 13 years. Our sex life is actually, I apologize to everyone if this is TMI. Our sex life is great. It's actually the most consistently easy, great part of the marriage. All the other shit is the hard stuff.
Yes. But some people effortlessly have a great sexual connection that lasts and lasts and lasts. And more power to you. But often the advice I find myself being, people write in because they have a problem, not because everything's great and perfect.
Fair.
So people will write in and say, we've lost a spark.
Yeah.
And, to your question, how do you keep it in a monogamous relationship?
Yeah.
At the beginning, you're the adventure they're on. They're the adventure you're on. It's new and exciting and strange and dangerous and risky, and the adrenaline pumps and the cortisone, stress hormone pumps, which is arousing. Risk and fear is arousing. It's effortlessly exciting at the start. And then after 5 years, after 10 years, it requires some effort to keep it exciting. You have to link arms and go on an adventure together. You have to create adventures. Now, that can mean opening up. Or adventure can be a little bit more sort of hardwired into an open relationship because you're going to be having new experiences, bringing new people.
Sure.
But in a monogamous relationship, to keep that spark, you have to fan the flames in the way you didn't at the beginning. And some people think that the fact that they're having to fan the flames 5 years in, 10 years in, is evidence that the relationship is falling apart.
That's right.
And it's not. It's not evidence a relationship is falling apart. That you're not actively trying to fan the flames, that could be evidence a relationship is falling apart.
Yes.
But people sort of misdiagnose this or think this is a problem. The impression you get from movies and TV and film and a lot of terrible sex advice out there is that, everybody who's in a great relationship is fucking at 20 years like they were fucking at 2 months.
No. And
you're not. You're going to have a different kind of sex, it's going to have a different emotional resonance. But if you want to have that kind of free fall feeling, new relationship energy in a long-term relationship, you don't have to open up for that, but you do have to create exciting, sexy, nutty adventures together.
Or a little drama. You got to create a little drama. I want to ask you 4 music questions before I lose you. Okay. Let's all everybody cough. Everybody take a break and cough.
But can I say one last thing about monogamy?
Yes, but you're frozen. So before you say it, okay, there you go. Go ahead.
I'm very pro monogamy, and I'm so glad to talk with somebody who is in a monogamous, not monogamish relationship. I'm not the enemy of monogamy. A lot of the advice I give is to monogamous people about making a monogamous relationship successful and resilient, which sometimes means learning to forgive or get past something that you thought was cheating.
Sure.
And also my advice to all monogamous people out there, if we define cheating as unforgivable and then define everything as cheating, including having a work friend of the opposite sex, sending a text message to an ex on their birthday, that is just banal. Looking at a barista a little too long, like micro infidelities, micro cheating.
Yes.
Define it as unforgivable. Define everything as cheating. No relationship you're ever going to be in is going to last longer than a year.
Of course, monogamy has to be like, you got to find your happiness from yourself in part, from your relationship in part. But if monogamy is a prison, like it sucks to be in prison. It sucks to be in the prison of being a straight white man. It sucks to be in the prison of being in monogamy if you make it a prison. Your pandemic pod of your pandemic pod of who I'm sure were all wonderfully handsome men. To me, that sounds like a prison. I'm like, oh my God, so many guys in the house. How did you even deal with this?
Oh my God, so many blowjobs to give.
Oh my God, literally.
How will I ever get through the day?
Never. I have to ask you some music questions.
Okay.
Also, I just have to point out though, the part where you don't get to talk to monogamous people, and I'm obsessed with I'm like the weirdest person in so many spaces that I go into. But in this space, I'm like the token monogamous person that you're talking to. I would love to represent the team of monogamy.
Practically a trad wife.
Basically a trad wife. Okay. Did you have a wedding song?
No. Terry and I do have a song by accident.
What is it?
Vicky Carr's version of Can't Take My Eyes Off of You.
How did that become your song?
It was funny when you asked me to come on the show because I felt like a bridge later to have to confess that my boyfriend reminded me when I told him I was going to do this podcast.
Yeah.
That one of the first things I said to him is, I hate music.
What?
I don't listen to a lot of music.
Okay.
I don't. I grew up as a tween and an adolescent. When you form your kind of like attachment to music,
yes,
very viscerally. I was into musical theater, and popular music was three assholes with electric guitars and one jerk with drums,
okay.
and I don't like how electric guitar sounds. So I just wasn't in the habit of listening to music.
That's insane. We're moving that to the side. What are some of your favorite shows, Dan? Because I also have a BFA in drama from the Tisch School of the Arts.
A Little Night Music, Company and Follies, which I assign to everyone I know who's about to get married. You have to listen to these shows, and you'll learn everything you need to know about a long-term relationship.
Yes.
Cabaret.
Yeah.
Carousel,
yes.
which is a very problematic musical. It celebrates domestic violence.
I mean,
South Pacific.
Oh wow,
Man of La Mancha.
Yes,
I have. Yeah, I'm a musical theater queen. But
did you ever get into falsettos?
No.
Oh really? When I was in high school, I saw Mandy Patinkin in that. Not once, not twice, but thrice. Were you like a Rent whore or any of that?
Didn't like Rent. I wasn't a Phantom faggot. I was a little too old for Phantom. Loathed Cats, but loved the movie because it was so hilariously terrible.
Really? I DJ'd the premiere for that movie. I DJ'd the premiere party, and those twins, there's like the twins. I was like playing the records with the twins, and Jason Derulo was there. Jason Derulo. That was not a very good movie, though. I'm surprised that you love Cats. I think of you as having such highbrow taste, and yet you're like, I loved Cats, the movie. I'm like,
I hate the musical, but I love the movie because have you ever seen a movie where like every single choice was the wrong choice? Every decision.
Did you see the movie with Gaga, the House of Gucci movie?
I did not.
You need to go watch that movie because Gaga and Al Pacino, who I worship, Gaga and Al Pacino were in one movie, which was like wildly camp and the most fabulous thing you've ever seen. And Adam Driver and everyone else who worked on the movie, including the writers and directors, were in like a serious Godfather-esque feature film. Everything about that movie was wrong, and it's amazing. Amazing.
I will absolutely watch it for that reason. That's why I love Cats. It's so bad. It's just so bad.
Did you get into Clue? Did you watch Clue like 500 million times?
I didn't.
What? Come on. I feel like we should have more references together. I can't believe you hate the electric guitar. Like, the electric guitar is my entire life. Did you watch Becoming Led Zeppelin, the doc on Netflix?
No.
Would you watch that just as like an example in how Jimmy Page is a visionary of the highest order, or does that not interest you?
I watched the Queen biopic and I watched the Elton John biopic. Which
no electric guitars in either of those. Are you a piano man?
Guitars in them. Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. Just like I was always a bit of a weirdo and out of step with my peers.
Yeah.
And my peers, like it was all AC/DC and Metallica and rock and roll, and I just, except for wanting to give a blowjob to Peter Frampton,
sure,
there was nothing that spoke to me in popular music from the time I was 10 until I was, there's stuff that's come out that my husband listens to that I like, but I couldn't even tell you the names of the artists. Every time he plays something that I like, I'm like, who is this again? And he gets really mad at me because my brain won't file.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
that data.
We have to end, which makes me so sad. I have 9,000 questions that I stayed up all night thinking about what I really wanted to ask you and making sure that I didn't come on and say, remember the time when you made up good giving and game? That was awesome. Like, the guy in the SNL skit who just repeats all the best parts of them. That's like what I want to do with you. Like, can you have me on your show? If you have me on your show, I would do that with you for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, please come on my show. Let's
Should we exchange numbers since we haven't seen each other in 20 years?
Yes, we should. Do I have your email?
I will have someone put us in touch.
Okay. Let's pick up where we left off 25 years ago.
Let's pick up where we left off 25 years ago. I also want to point out that you have not died in this session. You have not coughed almost once.
Once.
And I wonder what that says about when we're engaged, when we're really in our prefrontal cortex and focused on something, how that affects the chemistry in our body and our ability to become well quickly.
The adrenaline override. Real. You walk on stage and you're fine, and then you walk off stage and you collapse.
You walk off stage and then you get the I don't even want to say this on my own show. I'll tell you next time. Call me on and I'll teach you my own good giving and game for what happens when you walk on stage and you suddenly have to go to the bathroom.
Yes, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, great. Let's end it there.
Okay.
For listeners who want to make 2026 their best year ever in love, what is one relationship skill worth developing? Maybe one that sometimes people overlook.
Oh my God, I have to pick one. I have so many. Round the fuck up. There is the one out there. There's maybe a 0.78, if you're lucky, a 0.82. And you round them up to the one. That is like one of the most damaging myths about love and romance. I hear from people in what sound like wonderful relationships who have this nagging fear that they're not the one, because they've got it in their head that there's somebody out there that they will just merge with perfectly, who will meet every need, and it'll be a frictionless relationship, and they haven't met that person yet. And I have to be the one to break it to them over and over again that person doesn't exist. You create that person. Someone becomes the one because you treat them like they are, and they return the favor by treating you like you're their one when you're not. And a real good long-term relationship is a story. I think two people tell each other about what they mean as a couple. The couple is a myth that these two individuals create together. And you can edit that story, you can revise that story. Like Terry and I were monogamous with this for years before we were open, and we were open before we were poly. And so we kept revising our story and tweaking what we meant. And I'm not saying everybody needs to go from monogamous to poly. I know people who went from open to closed, but to be able to revise your story and keep rounding up, that's love. Terry knows that I love him more than he deserves. And I know that he loves me more than I deserve. Right. And I'm so grateful that he loves me despite what a terrible human being I am, and vice versa.
That's the final word. Round the fuck up. Because there is no the one. You make them the one and how you treat them, and they make you the one on how they treat you. You make them the one on how you treat them. They make you the one on how they treat you, and you write the narrative together. Dan Savage, I am in love with you, and I would love to ask you on a date, but I don't know if I have your consent or if this is a safe space. So we'll have to continue this conversation.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for being on Music is Therapy. Round the fuck up. That's the whole thing. Stop looking for the one and start building one. If this hit you like it hit me, please share it with someone who needs this message. And if you liked this episode, I humbly ask that you leave stars or a review. It takes a minute and it means everything. Next week's guest is the great Emily Fletcher. Oh my God, hold on to your hats. The Love and Happiness playlist is in the show notes. Every song is there for a reason. Let it work on you. And tell me what song I forgot. You guys have been telling me that. I love it. Email me at musicistherapypod@gmail.com. And if you want to go deeper with this work, I teach the full method in my Music Connection Therapy course. The link is in the show notes as well. I am DJ Hesta Prynn. This is Music is Therapy. See you next Friday. Thanks for listening. DJ Hesta Prynn's Music is Therapy is a production of iHeart Podcasts. I'm your host, DJ Hesta Prynn. Our executive producers are Marissa Bramwell and Jonathan Strickland. Our associate producer is Jonathan Klopp. Our marketing lead is Allison Cantor-Grabler. That's it.